That's the healthiest way to breathe for your restful position.
Mm-hmm.
When we're doing exercise, let's take Pilates for that example again. You can literally use the inhale through the nose, blow through pursed lips to help activate the mechanical aspects of breathing.
It's actually very, it's almost like self-empowering to know that there's so much that we can do with something that's so readily available. Hi and welcome. My name is Mila and I'm a Pilates and mobility coach, and I specifically focus on how exercise can improve our overall health and well-being. And today I'm joined by Samya. Samya is an osteopath, Pilates yoga coach, as well as a breathwork facilitator. And the goal of this video will be to talk about how we can use exercise to increase lung capacity and strengthen our immune system. So Samya, welcome. I'm really happy to have this chat with you. Could you start off by just telling me a little bit about what a breathwork facilitator is?
Sure. Good morning. Hi, Mila. Well, a breathwork facilitator is somebody who supports you through a breathwork session. So you would spend about 1 hour with your coach to go through an intense 20-minute breathing exercise. It's basically you're lying down, you're comfortable, and you're breathing quite powerfully with a lot of prepping and practice beforehand. And the purpose of the breath work session is for you to go through any emotional release. Remember that emotions are energy and they live in our tissues, and sometimes they get stuck, especially if our energy is stuck, and we can't seem to heal from things sometimes without realizing. So instead of doing all the psychology work and going to one therapist after another, you can actually do breath work, which releases the trauma out of your system and hits all facets of your being, your physical, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, without you having to face your demons in a sense. It's fantastic. It's quite powerful.
Yeah. And is this something that you often use more in osteopathy practice or more in your exercise practice with your patients?
That's a very good question. I actually apply it as needed wherever it happens. So it has happened where in a massage, we did a breathwork session because I give massage as well. I use it during osteopathy, especially if somebody has come in, is very emotional and a lot of pain. Sometimes we need to go to the breath while I'm treating. And sometimes it's happened where we paused in a Pilates session and let's do some breath work today. And that's all we did. And that was better for them than doing the movement.
It's interesting, yeah, the role that breath really plays in our well-being. So it's something that really can be applied in all areas, right?
Absolutely. Everything, even your children.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's really interesting. Could you share why lung capacity and breathing quality is so important for somebody?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, we are born with an inhale and we die with an exhale. It is the breath of life. It's fundamental to our well-being. You can't live without breath. The ancient Chinese medicine call it qi. In the yogic traditions, in the Ayurvedic, it's prana. That life force, that energy that drives absolutely everything on this planet and in the universe for that matter. That breath allows us to access that life force that generates our well-being. It's really the breath helps move the qi, move the energy through your system as well. But breath also is detoxifying. But we'll talk about that a little bit later, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's, you said it's the first and last act of life, and yet I feel that it is so often overlooked in, much of exercise or people's fitness journey, right? We're all about building a strong back or mobile hips or a pain-free neck. And often we look at it as, muscles, body, and breath is somewhere. It's like the missing link that often gets forgotten very often. So this was very interesting for me to also learn for my own practice with my clients.
Yeah.
I have a question. How can we use exercise to increase our lung capacity? Is this something that's isolated to breath work alone or exercise? Do they go hand in hand? And if so, if yes, how so?
That's a really good question. I'll give one good example, if I hope it's a good example. I was assisting in another breath facilitator's breathwork session. There was 20 people there, and we did the breathwork session. And what I noticed out of, I'll say 80% of those people, is that they couldn't maximize the benefit of the breath work because they mechanically couldn't breathe properly. You know what I mean? So really, what the work they should have done is do exercise and movement to get the mechanical aspects of breathing open so that your airways are open, your sinuses, your throat, your all the way down to your lungs, your rib cage mobility, the diaphragm has to move, the belly has to be free. A lot of people hold so much anxiety and tension in their abdomen, they can't breathe. And so if you're doing a breathwork session, but you're only breathing apically, so just up here, you're not actually going to get any benefit out of it. In fact, you're probably going to harm yourself. Not necessarily harm, but you won't do yourself any good.
Yeah.
So exercise, if you think of your muscles and your fascia, right? Fascia is basically your matrix of your entire system. And really it's what holds our fluids together. If you think of your muscles being more fluid and the fascia giving it a form, when you're moving through your fascia, that fascia is moving the fluids through your system, right? But that connects from the surface of our skin all the way down deep, 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 deep to our organ tissue. So when you're just lifting an arm, you're actually starting to move not only the arm, the muscles of the pecs, the rib cage, but you're going down now deeper into the layers of the pleura, into the lung tissue, into the alveoli of the lungs tissue themselves, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting movement to help your fascia become a little bit more fluid to impact the organ itself.
Okay, so when you're talking of breath work, it's not just breathing exercises, it's breathing coupled with movement, or do you ever isolate breath work to just it being, the inhale, exhale?
It depends again on the purpose. So if you're looking for, well, first of all, if you need to get somebody's mechanical breathing moving, then you're going to do movement to actually help that. And there's ways of challenging and strengthening the diaphragm and the intercostals and the movement of the ribs and even the upper thoracic spine, lumbar spine. They all have a play in how you breathe. Even your psoas muscle, believe it or not. So yes, if somebody's not breathing well or is very, very sick, people with diseases, I get them moving first and foremost just to get the breath mechanics flowing to help pump the chi, right, that we were talking about, that life force. And then once it's more open, I'll work in stillness, either seated or sometimes lying down, where we actually do breath work. So that means we're doing breath exercises, pranayama, as they call it in the Ayurvedic, to challenge many aspects of breathing and many aspects of your health. Each breath work variation impacts the system in a different way.
Yeah. It's interesting, yeah, like, when you say specifically, it really depends on the case scenario. And also really important when we're looking at people with disease. Why I mention that is that I have a client who has fibromyalgia. And so I see the waves of her doing better and then kind of dipping a little bit in her journey, because I'm only like a part of her process. She has a medical team looking after her. And just this last session, she's been away for a while. She came back and I noticed how her breathing changed. And she didn't even have to tell me that she was in more pain because the change of meds didn't help. I could see it in her. And just to get her to sit and breathe, it was It was very difficult for her. She almost didn't understand how not to, crunch into her shoulders. And we spent so much of our class coupling small movement with breathing that she said, oh, my ankles opened up. But we mainly did a lot of breath work with some movement. So it's very true. You can almost, you can see someone's breath change based on their state, right?
Absolutely. Remember that we have a central nervous system, and then from that stems our autonomic nervous system and the actually somatic one. So what you want to do is, let me rephrase, depending on your mental emotional state, right? So if you're in physical pain as well, that can affect you. Your nervous system is going to be at a certain state, which affects your heart rate, which affects your breath rhythm, your frequency of breath, the depth of the breath, the amplitude of the breath. But what's fantastic is that even though it happens automatically in our autonomic nervous system, we can also have control of the breathing. That is our one axis through breath to impact our autonomic nervous system, right? The autonomic nervous system takes care of our heart rate, our breathing, but also our digestion and all the other systems and things that are happening in our body without us realizing, right? But the one way that we can take control of that again is going to our breath. So if we can use the amplitude and the frequency and the depth of the breath to actually slow the heart rate down, that heart sends a lot of signals to the brain. There's actually more signals from the heart to the brain than the other way around. So the heart talks to the brain and says, hey, send these chemicals through the system. Let's calm things down. Let's go more out of fight or flight and more into rest and restore. And then once you change the state of the being, then they will have more access to be able to breathe a little bit more deeply. And so it's a how do you call it? Ping pong game, right? It's it's a vicious circle. Yeah. Not a vicious one, but a helpful circle.
Yeah, it's actually very it's almost like self-empowering to know that there's so much that we can do with something that's so readily available, right? Because we always look for answers somewhere else, like many people. And it's actually quite empowering to know that we can control our state or we can contribute to it, and that we're not really helpless. We can help ourselves. So that's quite something as a tool to have.
Absolutely. It's very powerful. And remember that whenever you're taking things like medication, that's toxic to the system, right? Even though it might be helping you for pain management or whatever, your body now has to deal with that toxicity. One way of helping your body detox is actually using the breath.
That's fantastic.
It's very powerful.
Yeah. And in what ways does improving lung capacity benefit our immune system?
Well, exactly that. As the breath, one, stress is very often by research, right? They showed that stress is the leading cause of any kind of disease or ailment. So one, if you can go to the Heart Math Institute have done all the research on HRV or heart rate variability. You use the rhythm and the depth of the breath to breathe in 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, to bring you out of fight or flight and back down into parasympathetic. And when you can even out that sine wave for a good 5 minutes is actually enough, you're bringing yourself back into that parasympathetic, de-stressing, and therefore giving your body a chance to actually do the work it needs to do. Send all the right chemicals to the body. We have all our pharmaceuticals naturally within us. It's just a matter of changing which nervous system you're using to access which chemicals, right? You don't want all the adrenaline and the cortical. You don't want all the stress hormones. We want to calm those adrenals down and get a little bit more of the parasympathetic, beautiful, joyful love, gratitude, appreciation, all those kind of nice chemicals going on. But then we have the mechanical side for the immune system. Our blood vessels and our lymphatic system run side by side throughout your entire body. And if you're toxic because of medication, because of wrong thoughts, wrong emotions, not moving enough, not exercising enough,
Mm-hmm.
then you're stagnant and you're becoming more acidic. If you don't eat well, you're acidic.
Right.
So one way to clean yourself out, to improve your immune system, is breath work, because the mechanical movement of the breathing moves the blood, moves the lymph, and the lymphatic system is bigger than the blood system. So that's where all your garbage is. It's your sewage system. All the garbage is pushed out through your skin, through your kidneys. The liver helps to filter all that. You want to make sure that all those I can't say that word. Eliminatory systems are open. I got it out in the end.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, you know, it sounds like the body actually is always trying to heal itself, or it's trying to do better. You know, like I've heard people
It's actually
say
trying to come back to homeostasis all the time. It's always working towards homeostasis. So if you have any kind of symptom, don't try and buffer it or suppress it, because it's your body's way of pushing crap out, right? It's working towards homeostasis.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It just made me think, you know, I see clients that are that have gone through, you know, injuries or illness, and they come to a point where they think that their body is against them, and that is such a wrong way to think about it. The body is actually for them if we give it the tools, and as I understand correctly, if we tap into the right sympathetic system, parasympathetic, yeah, the more calm, relaxed state versus the fight or flight. When we're in that more calm state, our body's actually, it's not like chilling on holiday, it's actually working there to heal us and return us back to our most healthiest self. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's a very good point, because you actually need energy to heal. Right? So you want to breathe, to move your chi, to build up, to really raise your vibration, so that it can use the energy to actually do the work to heal you. But you had a good point with this example that you gave, is that if your thoughts tell you that your body's working against you, you're blocking, just with your thoughts, your healing mechanism. Because those thoughts are chemicals. Those thoughts is energy, right? So it's almost counteractive and counterproductive. So you've got to change literally the way you think, because thought creates matter. If you want to heal, you got to think positive. You've got to tell yourself, I am capable. And education and knowledge and understanding is so important to that. If you know truthfully how your body works, you can't but trust it.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, even though we're talking about breath, we talked about the mental state as well. And this just goes back to like the biggest peeve I have with things online is like the quick fixes, you know, like do this for this. And even when we're talking about a better immune system and we're talking about breath and improving our lung capacity, but there's so much more to it. You know, there is how we think about it. And one of the things that you mentioned in the beginning is also movement with it. So going a little bit more now in the direction of movement to cover that aspect too. If we look at Pilates specifically, or it could be yoga, anything from your practice, what specific exercises are best for boosting lung capacity and our immune health?
Okay, so let's go to the mechanical side first, the movement. If you think about, we have two innate movements. The breathing, mechanical breathing of inhale and exhale. Every inhalation, there's a natural expansion and movement towards extension. And every exhalation, there's a natural movement of flexion, right? So we can take advantage of those ranges of movement initially as a first step to actually help expand and open the ribs and the lungs, right? The movement of the spine through extension and flexion. So anything of things like our spine stretch in Pilates, a roll down, a standing roll down, our roll back and roll over, our swan dive, moving forward and back and coordinating the breath to the movement. Sorry, I said that the wrong way around. Yeah, coordinating the movement to your breath, so let the breath lead you. So when you're going into extension, full inhale. And when you're going into flexion, literally blow those candles out, squeeze the air out of the lungs. I think Joseph Pilates actually said that. He said, detoxify on that exhale, squeeze your lungs out, wring them out like a towel so that your next inhalation is more powerful and expansive. So that's a first step. And then if you really want to help wring your lungs out, we're looking at twists, right? So any spine twist, any saw, anything that takes you in that direction where you're exhaling, exhaling, exhaling all the air out. Your oblique twist is a fantastic one because the abdominals actually help expel the air out of your lungs. And then inhale, try and expand more when you come out of your twist. Right. Our side bends, right? Our mermaids, for example, those are great because they start opening up the spaces between each rib cage. Think of that accordion-like or jellyfish-like movement, right? Every inhale, expand and open up the rib cage. Every exhale, come back. And then we have the diaphragm, which is really the real jellyfish itself, right? So things like the bridge. When you go into your bridge position, your head's lower, your pelvis is higher. Now your diaphragm has to work against the weight of your organs, right? So you can stay up there in your bridge and pump the diaphragm. You can inhale, push the belly out. Literally, we always tell people to keep their belly in and tighten up, but the diaphragm contracts on an inhale, right? So you can use that inhalation to push those organs away from your head in the bridge position. Exhale, pull the belly in and squeeze the air out of your lungs and pump that a few times before rolling down from your bridge. Great diaphragm exercise.
Yeah, that's very interesting because, Pilates coordinates movement with breath, but the way that you explain it, it makes a lot more sense. So it's not like exhale here just because you have to. It makes sense where you're pushing for the exhale and where you're, if I can say, reaching for the inhale or expanding on the inhale, and how you can manipulate movement to further challenge it, because it's not just breathe and the diaphragm gets stronger, right? We have to challenge ourselves in the positions that we put ourselves. And that's really interesting. The bridge is the one that I have actually never heard of before. So that was a really great find or discovery for me as well.
Yeah, we go to the bridge as a core and glute exercise.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful exercise to get the spine articulating and loose and the rib cage supple and the diaphragm supple. It's a beautiful one to use for that. And if you take the arms overhead during your bridge as you roll down, you're opening up the lats and the sides, and that's great for lung capacity.
That's true. So it's almost, and I guess nothing is one rule applies to all, but we can, if I understand correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we can look at within exercise, really looking for maximum breaths rather than shallow breaths. So when we are, for example, in the bridge, we want to be getting into the deep breaths. So we never want to
through all your movement.
Through all the movement, right? We can really say that through all movement, we should be encouraging a nice deep or max inhale, max exhale.
Yeah, if you I don't know if there's a really famous book by James Nestor called Breath. It's hit the charts. Out of the hundreds of breathing books that I have, I think that one's the best one. He talks about going for a long run. He would run just as exercise, but in the run, he forced himself to breathe through his nose, which makes you feel like you're suffocating. But in practice, with practice, you would get better and better and more efficient at breathing. So he would tell himself while he's running, inhale slowly through your nose, exhale slowly through your nose, even though you really want to pant.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're panting only because your body needs oxygen. If you think obese people who are really toxic and sick, they're always panting. Why are they panting? It's not because they're overweight. It's because they're toxic. They're acidic. So one way your body's goes back to homeostasis, more alkaline, is to bring more oxygen in. And it uses that oxygen to de-acidify yourself. And so you exhale the carbon dioxide out. It's waste, right? So you want to always think of going into a deep, slow breathing, really bring oxygen into the bottom of your lungs, exhale all the air out every time.
That's really interesting. And would you, just as a last question, because I find this so interesting, would you encourage a particular like inhale and exhale through the nose, or inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, through pursed lips? Or would you even play around and do different versions of or combinations during exercise?
Definitely different versions depending on the purpose and the use. I always tell people there's no right answer and there's no wrong answer, because it depends what you want to get out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we should be able to just breathe through our nose. When you're sleeping, your mouth closed, breathe through your nose. That's the healthiest way to breathe for your restful position.
Mm-hmm.
When we're doing exercise, let's take Pilates for that example again. You can literally use the inhale through the nose, blow through pursed lips to help activate the mechanical aspects of breathing and to detoxify if you really want somebody to really cleanse their system out when they're doing the exercise. But if somebody has asthma, emphysema, who knows, any kind of breathing problem, emphysema is going to the extreme there, but but you can say, let's challenge you and breathe purely through the nose while you're doing your reformer footwork. I mean, they're going to want to pant through the mouth. You're challenging their breathing capacity by telling them to breathe through the nose and to not go into the bad habit of mouth breathing. Right?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I feel like there's a billion and one questions that I'd still have to ask, but I think we can wrap it up for now and possibly talk more about this in the future, and even like explore potentially how we can, in practice, apply everything that we've spoken to. So I really hope that we get to chat on this further in another call.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mila.
Thank you, Samya.
pleasure.
I'm really glad that we had this conversation. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.